Dracula by Bram Stoker. Chapter 20. Jonathan Harker's Journal. 1st of October, evening. I found Thomas Snelling in his house at Bethnal Green, but unhappily he was not in a condition to remember anything. The very prospect of beer which my expected coming had opened to him had proved too much, and he had begun too early on his expected debauch. I learned, however, from his wife, who seemed a decent poor soul, that he was only the assistant to Smollett, who, of the two mates, was the responsible person. So off I drove to Walworth and found Mr. Joseph Smollett at home and in his shirt-sleeves, taking a late tea out of a saucer. He is a decent, intelligent fellow, distinctly a good, reliable type of workman, and with a headpiece of his own. He remembered all about the incident of the boxes, and from a wonderful dog-eared notebook which he produced from a mysterious receptacle about the seat of his trousers, in which he had hieroglyphical entries in thick, half-obliterated pencil, he gave me the destinations of the boxes. There were, he said, in the cartload which he took from Carfax, left at 197 Chickson Street, Mile End, Newtown, and another 6 which he deposited at Jamaica Lane, Bermondsey. If then the Count meant to scatter these ghastly refuges over London, these places were chosen at the first of delivery, so that, later, he might distribute more fully. The systematic manner in which this was done made me think that he could not mean to confine himself to two sides of London. He was now fixed on the far east of the northern shore, on the east of the southern shore, and on the south. The north and west were surely never meant to be left out of this diabolical scheme, let alone the city itself, and the very heart of fashionable London of the south-west and west. I went back to Smollett, and asked him if he could tell me if any other boxes had been taken from Carfax. He replied, "Well, governor, you've treated me to a wery hansom, and I've given him a half-sovereign, and I tell you all I know. I heard a man by the name of Bloxham say 4 nights ago, in the Are and Hounds in Pince's Alley, as how he and his mate had a rare dusty job in an old house at Purfleet. There ain't a many such jobs as this here, and I'm thinking that maybe Sam Bloxham could tell you summat." I asked if he could tell me where to find him. I told him that if he could get me the address it would be worth another half-sovereign for him, so he gulped down the rest of his tea and stood up, saying that he was going to begin the search, and then and there, at the door he stopped, and said, "Look here, governor, there ain't no sense in me keeping you here. I may find Sam soon, or I mayn't, but anyhow, he ain't like to be in a way to tell you much tonight. Sam's a rare one when he starts on the booze. If you can give me an envelope with a stamp on it and put your address on it, I'll find out where Sam is to be found and post it to you tonight. But you'd better be arter him soon in the morning, or maybe you won't catch him, for Sam gets off main early. Never mind the booze the night before." This was all practical, so one of the children went off with a penny to buy an envelope and a sheet of paper, and to keep the change. When she came back I addressed the envelope and stamped it, and when Smollett had again faithfully promised to post the address when it was found, I took my way to home. Where, on the track anyhow. I'm tired tonight, and I won't sleep. Mina is fast asleep and looks a little too pale. Her eyes look as though she had been crying. Poor dear, I've no doubt it frets her to be kept in the dark, and it may make her doubly anxious about me and the others. But as best as it is better to be disappointed and worried in such a way now than to have nerve broken. The doctors were quite right to insist on her being kept out of this dreadful business. I must be firm, for on this particular burden of silence must rest. I shall not ever enter on the subject with her under any circumstances. Indeed, it may not be hard tasks after all. She herself has become reticent on the subject, and has not spoken of the Count or his doings ever since we told her of our decision. 2nd of October, evening. A long and trying, exciting day. By the first post I got my directed envelope with a dirty scrap of paper enclosed, on which was written, with a carpenter's pencil and a sprawling hand, "Sam Bloxham, Corkins, 4 Porter's Court, Bartle Street, Walworth. Ask for the despite." I got the letter in bed and rose without waking Mina. She looked heavy and sleepy and pale, and far from well. I determined not to wake her, but that, when I should return from this new search, I would arrange for her to go back to Exeter. I think she would be happier in our own home, with her daily tasks to interest her, than being here amongst us and in ignorance. I only saw Dr. Seward for a moment and told him where I was off to, promising to come back and tell the rest soon, as I should have found out anything. I drove to Walworth and found, with some difficulty, Potter's Court. Mr. Smollett's spelling misled me, and I asked for Porter's Court instead of Potter's Court. However, when I had found the court, I had no difficulty in discovering Corcoran's lodging-house. When I asked the man who came to the door for the despite, he shook his head and said, "I don't know him. There ain't no such person here. I never heard of him in all my bloomin' days. Don't believe there ain't nobody of that kind living here or anywheres." I took out Smollett's letter, and as I read it seemed to me that the lesson of the spelling of the name and the court might guide me. "What are you?" I asked. "I'm the deputy," he answered. I saw at once that I was on the right track. Phonic spelling had again misled me. A half-crown tip put the deputy's knowledge at my disposal, and I learned that Mr. Bloxam, who had slept off the remnants of his beer on the previous night at Corcoran's, had left for his work at Poplar at 5. That morning he could not tell me where the place of work was situated, but I had a vague idea that it was some kind of new-fangled warehouse, and with this slender cue I had to start for Poplar. It was 12 o'clock before I got any satisfactory hint of such a building, and this I got at a coffee shop where some workmen have their dinner. One of these suggested that there was being erected at Cross Angel Street a new cold storage building, and that this suited the condition of a new-fangled warehouse. I at once drove into it. An interview with a surly gatekeeper and a surlier foreman, both of whom were appeased with the coin of the realm, put me back on the track of Bloxam. He was sent for on my suggesting that I was willing to pay his day's wages to his foreman for the privilege of asking him a few questions on a private matter. He was a smart enough fellow, though rough of speech and bearing. When I had promised to pay for his information and given him earnest, he told me that he had made 2 journeys between Carfax and a house on Piccadilly, and had taken from this house to the later 9 great boxes, Main-heavy ones, with a horse and cart hired for him by this purpose. I asked him if he could tell me the number of the house on Piccadilly, to which he replied, "Well, governor, I forgets the number, but it was only a few doors from a big white church or something of the kind, not being long built. It was a dusty old house, too, nothing of the dustiness of the house we took in the bloomin' boxes from." "How did you get into the house, if they were both empty?" "There was the old party that engaged me with a waitin' in the house at Purfleet. He helped me to lift the boxes and put them in the dray. Curse me, but he was the strongest chap I ever struck, and him an old fellow with a white moustache, one that thin that you would think he couldn't throw a shadder." How this phrase thrilled through me. Why, he took this end of boxes like they was pans of tea, and me a puffin' a blowin' afore I could end up mine anyhow. I'm no chicken, neither. "How did you get into the house at Piccadilly?" I asked. "He was there too. Mustn't have started off, got there before me, for when I rang the bell, he came and opened the door himself. Helped me to carry the boxes into all. The whole 9. Yes, there was 5 in the first load and 4 in the second. It was main dry work. I don't so well remember how I got home." I interrupted him. "Were the boxes left in the hall?" "Yes, it was a big hall. There was nothing else in it." I made one more attempt to further matters. "You didn't have any key?" "Never used no key or nothing. The old gent, he opened the door himself and shut it again when I drove off. I don't remember the last time, but that was the beer." "And you can't remember the number of the house?" "No, sir, but you needn't have no difficulty about it. It's a hot iron with a stone front with a bow in it. I steps up to the door. I know those steps having to add the carry the boxes with 3 loafers, what come round to earn a copper. The old gent gave them shillings, and they seen they got so much they wanted more, but he took one of them by the shoulder and was likely to throw him down the steps till the lot of them went away cussin'. I thought that with the description I could find the house, so having paid my friend for his information, I started off for Piccadilly. I had gained a new painful experience. The Count could, it was evident, handle the earth boxes himself. If so, time was precious, for now he had achieved a certain amount of distribution. He could, by choosing his own time, complete the task unobserved. At Piccadilly Circus I discharged my cab, walked westward. Beyond the Junior Constitutional I came across the house described, and was satisfied that this was the next of the lairs arranged by Dracula. The house looked as though it had been untenanted. The windows were encrusted with dust, and the shutters were up. All the framework was black with time. and from iron and paint had mostly scaled away. It was evident that up to lately there had been a large notice board in the front of the balcony. It had, however, been roughly torn away, the uprights which had supported it still remaining. Behind the rails of the balcony I saw that there were some loose boards, whose raw edges looked white. I would have given them a good deal to have been able to see the notice board intact.